back on MorningLine. Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall with us this morning, 737-7587, if you'd like to join in the conversation. And actually, Vicky would. So we'll take Vicky's call next. Vicky, good morning. Hi, Vicky.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mr. Hall. How you doing?
I'm okay, Vicky. How are you doing? Hot.
Fine. I want you to be truthful with me.
All right.
I want to ask you this question.
Okay.
And I know for a fact about this. Now, on the new jail, are y'all putting the detention back down there where they take them, these black guys and girls down there to beat them and make them talk and answer y'all? And wait a minute, let me finish. And if they don't answer y'all, they keep them down there in the dark with no food, no phone, or anything like that. I know for a fact that's true.
Okay, Vicky, will you listen to me?
Okay.
Okay. That is not true. That has never happened, ever, for as long as I've been there. Now, you can hear that. I'm telling you, that has never happened, as long as I've been there. And if someone's telling you that, I will sit down with you and that person to prove that has never happened. Now, if there is a person taken out of the jail to be interviewed by a police department outside of the jail, I can't tell you what happens in other rooms or other places. That's not what, but what you said was the jail. And what you implied was that that's in the sheriff's office, and that's absolutely not true. Never happened, never will, as long as I'm there.
Very straightforward. You know what that reminds me of to some degree, and I know not in recent years, Larry Britton used to talk to me about how at the old courthouse, and this is decades ago, and the legendary Larry Britton from the Banner and here at News Channel 5, someone I learned an awful lot from, he would talk about how sometimes inmates would be going over to the courthouse and they would get in the elevator with the detectives to make their way up. And on the way in, they'd be like, I didn't do anything, I'm not going to talk. And by the time they got to the 6th floor, the elevator would open and they'd be a little ruffled and they'd be out, and all of a sudden they'd be singing like a bird. And Larry would talk about in the old days, I have no doubt that those detectives roughed them up in there and said, you're going to talk and you're going to tell the story. That kind of crap that would go on. And the sheriff knows if there was evidence of some of what Vicky was talking about, we would catch wind of it. Phil Williams would catch wind of it, and we would look into it. Are there abuses sometimes outside or whatever, sometimes where officers will rough up folks? Yes, but there is not a dungeon in the jail where specifically black inmates are taken and beaten to talk and then kept there if they don't. That simply does not happen, and I will vouch for the sheriff on that as well. I mean, we would hear or see something along those lines.
And let me give you something that might help too. We don't investigate the crime, right? We just went through the conversation. So let's say that there's a person who is in jail for a crime and they're trying to get them to talk. Well, who they is not the sheriff's office.
Right.
We don't ask you questions about the crime. We're not interviewing you. We're not interrogating you. We have nothing to do with that. So and no police agency comes into the jail to do that.
So it's not as though you say, okay, you just house and imprison the individuals, but it's not as though someone from an agency would come in and you say, okay, well, we've got this room set up. You go in there and you can. So when they do questioning of an inmate, they take them someplace else?
Most every time, that's what they're going to do. They want to get that recorded. You've seen it on TV for many years. That's all done in a police agency. We change the custody over. We turn Nick Beres over to the police department, whoever it is, and they are to return the custody of the prisoner when they finish interviewing them. There are visits in a jail, usually through glass, or there are even some in one-on-one, but it's not for interrogation purposes because, keep in mind, that's not recorded. And you always see the cameras and the audio, so they want that information recorded. So Vicky needs to understand, if that's happening, I have never heard of that outside of my agency either, but that's not my job. It is not happening in the jail. In the old days that Larry was talking about, by the way, I remember him very well. He's a good man, and his son is a friend of mine. I've talked to him for years. But Larry is right. In the old days, the jail and the police department were built together. The headquarters was built in the same building as the jail. And so what would happen is the transfer of the prisoner would go within the same building from us over to the police department, and they would go to the police department, be investigated, interrogated, and brought back. And there's elevators and there's rumors and stories, and I never saw it. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but what happened between the jail and coming back to the jail when they checked back in with us, they may have changed their story. It may have been some formal, difficult interrogation. I'm not saying it wasn't. What I want to be clear about with Vicki is that's not happening with the staff that work for me. It's not happening in the building that I used to run called the CJC, and it's not happening in the new building we're about to open. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen outside the jail, but keep in mind, we're not interested in did you do it or not. So we're not interrogating people, and we're not, as she said, having black people sent to a dungeon to be forced to talk.
And she may hear of some of these cases if there's some confusion there. That's not to say, and the sheriff, I'm sure you would agree, I mean, is not to say that bad things sometimes don't happen behind bars.
Sure.
Not necessarily in interrogations, but we've seen some cases in some of the state private prison systems and
including
the state
our own. We've had
where there are assaults, where there are suicides, where there are things that happen, not in connection with interrogations, but bad things, Vicki, do happen. And can there be a better job done in some of these facilities? I believe absolutely yes. But just, at least I'm glad she called to ask that. I hope she understands where we're coming from on that, or where you have clarified that. Let's go next to James. James, good morning. Hi, James.
Good morning, fellas.
Morning.
Good morning, James.
Okay, this is out there, but I have a suggestion to help stretch police and sheriff budgets. Why not get police retirees manning aging patrol cars with license plate readers parked, not patrolling, at strategic roads and highways to call in, not pursue stolen vehicles, suspicious vehicles, car wrecks, fires. They would be recertified for handgun to protect themselves and vehicle. No arrest powers, but could aid and assist law enforcement, CPR. They would be paid minimum wage since they're getting retirement. This would be called Eyes, Ears, Radio Reader. So that's EERR squad. And to answer what that young lady was saying about police brutality, I can tell you my father was a Detroit police officer in 1955. That was before Miranda. And the police had extreme powers back then, as we all know. If you ever seen that movie Mulholland Falls, where they wore the old hats and that's exactly what happened. And I'll tell you, my father's passed away, so he can't be prosecuted, but they had a wife beater on their patrol. And he beat this woman so bad, my dad says, take her out to the car. And I asked my father, did you ever do anything you regretted? And he told me he did. And that man, they never went back to that place again. He's alive, but he's not ever, well, he's probably gone now too, so you'll never hurt another woman again. So that's back in the old days. It's not now. I know that for a fact. Okay, fellas, that's all I got.
Thank you. Is he referring to what is constable, or is that a different thing? I know we don't have constables here, but
I'll tell you what,
his idea there.
James is not far off from something that we do in the sheriff's office that I have pitched just a couple months ago to the police department, the city, whatever, as an idea. So we started a program called Starting to Enjoy Your Pension, STEP. Starting to Enjoy Your Pension, STEP.
All right.
So what that means is if you're pension eligible, which is what he's talking about, retirees, you're pension eligible, and you take your pension, we will hire you back at your hourly rate that you're making today. So I'm going to make it easy just to make the math work. If you make $100,000 today and you take a pension after you've been there 25 years, you earn about half of that.
Okay.
So you get $50,000 of a pension. If I say I'll pay you your hourly rate, I can only let you work 19 and a half hours by law once you retire.
19 and a half hours a week.
Which is basically half of your regular hours.
Yeah, that's half of full time about.
So your pension's $50,000. 19 and a half times your hourly is the other $50,000. You're making the same money working part-time in our agency. We have 80 people plus doing
As opposed to collecting $100,000 in the
yeah, so you made 100, but you're making 50 pension and 50 on your new hourly rate, so you're back to 100. You didn't lose any money.
You didn't lose any, and the reason someone would do that is they want to stay busy and do things.
Right, and then we're only working 19 hours compared to 40 hours, right? And here's the other thing. Your cost to my budget moves to the pension fund. So your health care, your pension dollars all come out of a separate account of mine. And you've already invested in that account.
But then the other stuff, the hourly wage comes out of your budget.
Cheap.
But that's cheap. It's only 19 hours. And so what would they be doing?
Yes, great question. So what he's talking about and what I pitched to the mayor's office and to the police department is, he mentioned, and I will talk about his, but what I would do is to take retiree eligible police officers that are willing to do it and say, look, you're pension eligible, starting to enjoy your pension. You go on your pension, I'll pay you hourly rate to do traffic. He was talking about different things that are non-pursuit, non-aggressive stuff. By the way, traffic is a civil action. There's over 100
Traffic
of these
meaning
a day. Bumps into my car, wrecks. These
Responding
are
to stuff
non-criminal
like that.
activities.
Yeah.
And the people, it's on day shift. Most of these happen on days. And so what you do is you put a part-time retiree crew doing all of that instead of paying a full-time, which is what we're doing now, full-time, fully sworn police officer to spend 2 or 3 hours filling out the civil. Yes. Here's what you have to do. We do it now, right? Now, we don't do patrol, but we have people doing all sorts of jobs. My administrative assistant for 20 years went on step. She's now answering phones and scheduling people to have stuff cleaned up all over Nashville. She makes the same money she made full-time as a part-time person. We have 80-plus people. The happiest people in the whole agency are them. We save over $4 million a year in our budget for doing it. It's a win-win-win. And he's right that you don't have to have the fully sworn people doing some of these more trivial things that police officers have to do. By the way, police hate filling out accident reports.
Yeah, I know. It takes time. Yeah.
But if you took all that other stuff away and said, you're a retiree basically, and here I'm going to pay you 19 hours, all you have to do, and literally is come 19 hours a week and fill out who bumped into who on Broadway, then you're saving money, you're making it better for them.
Let's go to a break on that. Really, so you've suggested that?
Yes.
That's interesting. And
Publicly.
James, you're onto something. That idea makes sense to me in a lot of ways. It'll help the officers do what other more serious things they need to deal with, give some of these pensioners stuff to do that they probably would still enjoy. And
we'll give James a credit for it. How about that? It's a great idea.
That's a great idea. We'll take a break. When we come back, Ray and others, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to your calls in our final segment with the Sheriff right after this.